It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Reaction Beanie Yo 2. Day in that neighborhood. My brothers and sisters. Y'all, real talk now. I was on, YouTube earlier. Looking, trying to figure out, what channel we gonna go to today. What channel I'm gonna watch with my brothers and sisters. And then I clicked back on the home tab of YouTube. And when I clicked on the home tab of YouTube, I seen the man, the myth, the legend, had put out a video on a Saturday. He usually put them out on Sundays. And I'm thinking the only reason he put it out a day earlier this week is because of Mother's Day. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people gonna be spending time with their family and all that and that. He probably gonna be spending time with his family and just ain't have time to put the video out that day. I know me personally, I don't know if I'm putting out a video tomorrow because of Mother's Day, because I gotta go, spend time with my mama and my family. So maybe that's why he did. But y'all know who I'm talking about, right? Y'all know the man I'm talking about. Y'all know the myth. Y'all know the legend. MrBallen. MrBallen, y'all, put out a video for us today on a Saturday. Hope y'all doing excellent out there today, man, as always. And I appreciate y'all coming back to the channel. Hey, I'm amped up, y'all, because like I said, I didn't even know this man was putting out a video today. It just popped up. And I was going to record this shit earlier today. I was going to, going to put out a reaction earlier today. But I guess God would just hold me back until MrBallen dropped his latest video. I digress. Title of the video: Does this ghost solve murders? Does this ghost solve murders? Now, I have heard some stories, and some of them have been true, about how it wasn't confirmed there was actually ghosts that solved the murder, but you know how sometimes somebody will die and then they will be the one to actually solve their own murder. It'll seem like in a roundabout way. I know y'all know. Some of y'all get what I'm saying because of how shit'll play out. You be like, damn, that was her or him from the grave sending a message back to the real life to let us know that that was the killer. You know what I'm saying? I'm thinking that's how we gonna go with this one, but you never know fucking with MrBallen. I digress again, man. We finna go and check it out. We know it's finna be crazy, my brothers and sisters. And since we know it's finna be crazy, my people, y'all know what y'all got to do. Get whatever you might need. Get what you need. We back to MrBallen once again. I got what y'all need. Y'all ready to go? Then let's fucking go.
There are lots of paranormal stories floating around the internet. However, very few are credible. Today, we're going to look at one that is. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place, because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So, if that's of interest to you, please offer to make the like button a tuna sandwich, but instead of tuna, use a can of cat food. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story. In the early evening of January 23rd, 1897, a blacksmith named Erasmus Shue stoked his fire inside of his little shop in rural West Virginia and then called out to his 11-year-old helper, who was in the back cleaning up. Erasmus had been planning to head home early that night. However, a last-minute order for horseshoes had just come in, and so Erasmus knew that was not going to happen. He was going to have to work late. And so he was calling for his helper to send the helper to his home, Erasmus's home, to check on Erasmus's wife, Zona. He wanted to make sure that, one, Zona knew he would be late, and two, if Zona needed anything, the helper could go out and get it for her or help around the house or whatever she needed. After the helper had left, Erasmus went back to poking at his fire, but his mind was not on the horseshoes he needed to make. Instead, it was on his wife, Zona. The couple hadn't told anyone yet, but Zona was pregnant. Erasmus and Zona had only just met a couple of months earlier, but they had fallen in love very quickly. Zona was 23 years old, and she had beautiful dark hair and dark eyes and a quick sense of humor. She was a total free spirit who had grown up on a farm, and she had never really been away from home. When Erasmus had arrived in the little village called Livesey's Mill, which was located near a river at the foot of this mountain and was right near where Zona lived, he and Zona had noticed each other right away. Erasmus, who was quite a bit older than Zona, he was 35 years old, was tall and handsome with piercing blue eyes, and he had come to this little rural town to set up his blacksmith shop. And to Zona, he was like this amazing, new, exciting thing. Zona's family, especially her mother, Mary Jane, did not approve of the fact that Zona and Erasmus had begun seeing each other, mostly because Mary Jane didn't like the fact that Erasmus was so much older than Zona, but Zona was known for being incredibly stubborn, and she loved Erasmus, and so there was just no stopping her. So, in November, just a couple of months after meeting each other, Zona and Erasmus got married and they moved into a little house together, and very quickly, Zona got pregnant. And both she and Erasmus were so excited about this that they wanted to go around and tell people, but early on, it was clear Zona had some complications with this pregnancy. She was sick all the time, and she just seemed really unwell, and the doctor who was seeing her knew that it likely had to do with her pregnancy. And so the couple decided that they should just wait and let the pregnancy develop a bit before announcing the news. So, on this late January day, Erasmus began hustling to finish these horseshoes because he really wanted to get home and be there for Zona and make sure she really was okay. And so as Erasmus thought about Zona, the steel he was heating inside of this fire was glowing bright orange and was ready to be forged into shape. And so Erasmus got his hammer and he got to work. Meanwhile, Erasmus's 11-year-old helper had arrived at Erasmus and Zona's house, and the helper walked through the gate up to the front door of this little 2-story home, and he knocked on the front door. But Zona did not come to the door, which the helper thought was odd, because Zona was someone who was always bustling around the home and was very quick to open the door and chat with neighbors. And now, standing in front of this door, the helper couldn't even hear a sound inside of the house. It was like,
something wrong with Zona. We can go on say that, y'all. Something is going on with Zona. I hope Zona ain't dead in the house. But one cool thing I want to say real quick, y'all, is I never heard nobody with the name Erasmus. I don't know why, to me, that just sound like a cool ass name, a legendary name, a one of a kind name. It probably ain't in, you know what I'm saying, other countries, but here in the United States, I'm pretty sure that's rare as fuck. I never heard of a man named Erasmus, and that shit sound dope as fuck. Another thing real quick is an 11-year-old helper. Think about this shit way back in the day. Just think about how times have changed, y'all. Man, ain't 11-year-old helper in 2023. An 11-year-old ain't doing shit but going to school and coming home and playing Fortnite. And you know what I'm saying? That's all. 11-year-old is not gonna be no intern or no trainee. You know what I'm saying? So that's just crazy too. But my first thought for real, y'all, I think something gonna be fucked up with Zona because of her pregnancy. And she may die. I don't know. Or she may get killed. I don't know. Let's go.
no one was home. And so the helper knocked again, and after some more silence, he just reached down and tried the doorknob and found it was unlocked, and so he swung the door in. And right away, the helper noticed that the house was totally dark. None of the lamps were lit, even though the sun was setting fast. And so the helper stepped inside of the house and continued to call out for Mrs. Shu, but there was no answer. And at some point, as the helper turned a corner and looked towards the base of the stairs that led up to the second level, he froze, because lying on the ground was Zona. She was lying perpendicular to how the stairs run, on her back with one arm over her chest, like she was sleeping at the foot of the stairs. And so at this point, the helper is scared. He doesn't know what's going on here. Obviously something is wrong. And so very slowly, the helper began moving closer and closer to Zona. And when he was practically right on top of her, he yelled out her name one more time. And when she didn't call back and her chest wasn't moving and she was just totally still, he knew obviously something was terribly wrong. And so the helper at this point turned around and sprinted out of the house and ran back to his own house. And when he got there, he ran inside and he told his mother that he thought Mrs. Shu, Zona, was dead. And so the mother told the helper, run back to the blacksmith shop and tell Erasmus to go home right now. I'll get the doctor. It would take the local doctor, the same one who had been treating Zona for her pregnancy complications, almost an hour to finally get to Zona's house. And when the doctor arrived, he found the 11-year-old helper and his mother and other neighbors kind of clustered around in the first floor of the home. And then when he went up to the second floor into the master bedroom, he found Erasmus, who by this point had returned, and he was sitting on his bed, and he had laid out his wife, Zona, so that she was on her back and her head was in his arms, and he was stroking her hair and rocking back and forth and crying. The doctor, of course, knew Zona and Erasmus very well because of how often he had been treating Zona for her pregnancy issues over these last few weeks, and so he felt a pit of sadness looking at this scene, but he knew he had to do his job, and so he gently walked over and he put his hand on Erasmus's shoulder, and he just said, I need to examine Zona's body. And Erasmus, at this point, he didn't even look up. He just continued to sob and rock back and forth while stroking her hair. Finally, the doctor kind of was a bit more forceful in asking Erasmus to step aside, at which point Erasmus did. He got out of the way and positioned Zona flat on the bed, and he made sure her hair was perfectly combed all around her neck. And then Erasmus knelt down right next to the bed and continued stroking his wife's hair and crying, while the doctor at this point kind of moved to the foot of the bed and began looking at Zona and beginning his examination. And the doctor would quickly confirm that, yes, Zona was dead.
Damn.
And after looking at her pelvis and kind of moving her around, the doctor came to the conclusion that very likely Zona had passed away from pregnancy complications. Zona's funeral would be held the next day at the local cemetery at the top of this hilltop. And by this point, the word had gotten out that Zona had been pregnant when she died. And so during this...
Okay, time out, y'all. We kind of, I'm just saying me. I don't know what y'all thinking out there, but I'm on the right path because I said I think she dead before the little 11-year-old helper even went in the house and found her. But the doctor said she died of pregnancy complications, and she was having, problems in her pregnancy. But I'm still leaning toward that she got murdered by somebody. I'm still leaning towards a murder. Now, I don't know who the fuck did it. I don't know. And it's gonna be crazy when MrBallen said if that's the case. And I'm going by the damn title too. Does this ghost solve murders? So I'm thinking Zona in the afterlife solved her own murder, some kind of crazy ass way. But it seems like we on the right track with this one, y'all. It seems like we doing good so far. So far, so good. Let's keep going.
This funeral, everybody was staring at Erasmus, who was overcome with grief and crying so hard that he could barely catch his breath. And then right before they lowered Zona's casket into the ground, Erasmus made a point of putting his wife's favorite scarf into the coffin with her. He said his final goodbyes, he shut the casket, and then it was lowered into the ground. But while the mourners were obviously very moved by just how unbelievably grief-stricken Erasmus was, I mean, his whole family was wiped out in one blow, what really stood out to the people that attended that funeral was not Erasmus's reaction to his wife's death, but rather Zona's mother's reaction to Erasmus. During this funeral, Mary Jane, Zona's mother, didn't seem sad or grief-stricken or in any way reacting to the fact that her daughter had died. Instead, as the funeral went on, Mary Jane shamelessly glared at Erasmus with a look of pure hate and disgust on her face. And then, after the funeral was over, all the mourners wanted to go up to Mary Jane and Erasmus to pay their final respects to the family, but Mary Jane ignored all these people and promptly left the funeral without saying a word to anyone. Lately, me and
Mr. Ballen with his damn commercials, but that last little part before the commercial got me wondering, what the hell do Mary Jane got against Erasmus? Erasmus is such a cool name to me, y'all. It is such a fucking cool name, but what the hell? Why is she mad at him? Why she was looking at him like that? Do she know he the one that committed the murder? Let me think of some more crazy shit. Is she the one who committed the murder? I don't fucking know. I ain't even finna try to even come up with what the hell this story going, cause you know Mr. Ballen, he does the greatest plot twists ever. Let's go and fuck with Hello Fresh, man. Back to the story.
And in the days that followed Zona's funeral, Mary Jane's behavior only continued to get more and more bizarre. When neighbors would drop by Mary Jane's house to drop off food or just check in on her, Mary Jane refused to come to the door. Mary Jane basically began staying up all night. People would see there were candles lit in her bedroom at all hours, and they'd see her pacing around her room and then periodically kneeling on the ground and kind of staring off into the distance. And then on the rare occasion that Mary Jane actually left her house, she would look totally disheveled and distracted, and as she walked around town, she'd be mumbling under her breath and constantly looking over her shoulder like she was scared someone was following her. And when concerned neighbors came up to Mary when she was out of her house, she refused to make eye contact with them, didn't want to talk to them, and as fast as she could would get away from them. Whatever was going on with Mary Jane, her husband was not willing to talk about it to other people in town. However, they did notice that he had begun sleeping in the barn, so he was not even staying in the house with his wife. And then, on the morning of February 21st, so about a month after Zona had died, Mary Jane walked out of her house looking totally clean cut. She was not disheveled. She was not looking over her shoulder. She wasn't muttering to herself. She was standing tall, moving with a purpose, looking totally coherent. And as she moved, the only emotion people could see on her face was anger. And so Mary Jane, angrily walking with a purpose, walked her way to the local prosecutor's office, and instead of knocking and waiting to be let inside, she just opened the door and barged right inside. The prosecutor knew Mary Jane and knew how strange she had been acting over these last few weeks, and so when she came inside, he was alarmed at her sudden presence, but he was also pretty curious as to what was going on. And so when she came in and demanded to speak to him, he was happy to go into his office and take a meeting kind of simply out of curiosity. But once the two of them sat down in his office, Mary Jane proceeded to tell this prosecutor this totally outlandish story about her dead daughter, Zona, that at first made the prosecutor think, okay, clearly Mary Jane has lost her mind. That's what's been going on over the past few weeks. All this grief of losing her daughter has caused her to kind of snap.
What in the hell? I'm trying to think of it, y'all, before Mr. Ballen tell us. What in the fuck kind of story do Mary Jane got? Why has she been acting so weird? What does she know? And then it got to have something to do with the fucking husband because of the disdain and the way she was looking at him and the hatred in her eyes towards him. You know what I'm saying? But I can't put my finger on it other than that she know that he is the reason, like he murdered her daughter. That's the only thing I can think of. And I don't even think that's it, y'all. I think it's something crazier than that because we fucking with Mr. Ballen. I don't know. Let's just see. Let's go.
But by the end of these 2 hours that Mary Jane seemed to just be kind of rambling about this story about her daughter, the prosecutor started to realize that what she was saying kind of made a lot of sense, and his suspicions began to rise and rise. And so once Mary Jane was done telling this wild story about Zona, the prosecutor was convinced that what Mary Jane was saying had to be true, and so he knew they needed to dig Zona up. And so after Mary Jane had left, the prosecutor ran to the local doctor's house, the same doctor who had been treating Zona and then also looked at her after she died. And the prosecutor would tell the doctor that, hey, we need to exhume Zona and you need to examine her again.
So they gotta dig her up for some reason. What the hell they digging her up for? Like, I cannot even try to figure this shit out, y'all. Maybe some of y'all out there already know why they need to dig her body up to confirm Mary Jane's story. Like, why? What the fuck? This shit gonna be crazy.
And the doctor at first was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? But then after hearing what the prosecutor had to say about this crazy story that Mary Jane had just told him, the doctor agreed that, okay, yeah, we do need to do this. And so the next day, February 22nd, a team of men with shovels, along with the prosecutor and the doctor, headed up to the Hilltop Cemetery where Zona was buried, and they dug her casket up, and then they carried the casket down to the local schoolhouse, and then once she was inside, the workers lifted her body, which was fairly well preserved because the ground was so cold. They lifted her body out and they placed it on a table, and then everybody left except for the doctor and the prosecutor. And once the room was clear, the doctor and the prosecutor began examining Zona all over again. And within about 30 seconds of this re-examination of Zona's body, basically at the exact same time, the doctor and the prosecutor, who were on either sides of the body, saw the thing that Mary Jane had alluded to in her wild story about her daughter. And so the doctor and the prosecutor, they're seeing this thing, they look up at each other and they can't believe it. Mary Jane's story had to be true. The following is Mary Jane's wild story. On the day of Zona's funeral, even though Mary Jane was overcome with grief over losing her daughter, the feeling that she really was harboring was hatred towards Erasmus. She hated Erasmus. She had always hated him. But now it was like her daughter is dead and she's forced to watch this guy sob and cry over her daughter's casket, when in her mind she's like, this funeral is about her. It's not about you. And so the whole funeral, she's just staring at Erasmus, channeling all of her energy towards hating him. But then, as she's doing this, a new emotion began to creep up on her that she couldn't quite describe. Basically, it felt like something was terribly wrong. And intuitively, Mary Jane felt like the only person who could explain what this thing was that was wrong kind of in her life somewhere was her daughter, Zona, who was obviously dead. And so this feeling that something is terribly wrong, it completely consumed Mary Jane's mind. And so by the end of the funeral, she wasn't mad at Erasmus. She was just thinking, how do I get in touch with my daughter? I need to get answers from my daughter. And so when the funeral ended, Mary Jane just left the funeral as fast as she could. She went home, she went into her bedroom, and she knelt down and she began to pray. Not for peace or strength in this difficult time, but instead, she prayed for her daughter's ghost to appear to her and tell her what was wrong. And for the next month, that is all Mary Jane did. She was obsessed with this idea that she needed to basically conjure her daughter's ghost to tell her what this thing was that was wrong. And so that was why she was acting totally crazy. All she did was pray and then look for signs that her daughter's ghost had come or was on her way. And so she'd be up all night kind of looking around, hoping her daughter would suddenly appear. And then when she would go outside, the reason she was muttering is because she was still praying under her breath, and she was always looking over her shoulders because she thought her daughter would appear any moment. And then finally, one night in the middle of February, so this is a month into Mary Jane's attempts to conjure her daughter's ghost, she was in her room, she was praying like she normally did with all of her candles lit, and all of a sudden, as she's kneeling down praying, this bright light appears in the middle of her room. And as this light suddenly appeared, the room began to get really cold. And Mary Jane is staring at this light thinking, this is my daughter. But then just as quickly as the light and the cold that came with it had appeared, it disappeared. And so Mary Jane was both really excited because she felt like, okay, the prayers are working. That had to be my daughter's ghost or some sign that my daughter's ghost is going to come here. And so Mary Jane just doubled down on her prayers. She knew she was close to getting her daughter to show up. And so over the next 2 days, that bright light would appear 2 more times, and each time it would just quickly disappear. But again, Mary Jane is thinking, okay, something's happening. My prayers are working.
Okay, I could be completely off, but I gotta say it because MrBallen keep talking about this bright light appearing and shit. What if the bright light from the husband? I know that sound crazy as fuck. I know I may be way completely off in a whole nother ballpark, and I feel like I am. But with MrBallen, you never fucking know. And I still don't know what the fuck going on as far as I don't understand, bro. I don't get it yet. I get what's going on in the story, but I don't get it yet. The meat of the story. What the hell, MrBallen? What the fuck is going on? Let's see, man.
And then finally, on the fourth night, as Mary Jane is in her bedroom praying, the light appears in the middle of her room. It starts to get cold, but then instead of the light disappearing, Mary Jane would describe seeing her daughter kind of step out of this light and suddenly appear in the room. Mary Jane said that her daughter was dressed all in black and her skin was very pale and her eyes were these dark pits and her hair was straight down right over her shoulders and she was staring at her mother. And Mary Jane, when she saw this, even though she had been trying for a month to get her daughter's ghost to appear, now that it seemed to be happening, she was terrified. And so Mary Jane began backing up right as this ghost begins walking towards Mary Jane. But then Mary Jane, as she's up against the wall, tells herself, you have to be strong. You need to talk to the ghost. You need to figure out what's wrong. And the only question that Mary Jane was able to come up with was, how did you die? And when she asked this question, Zona's ghost came to a stop. And then when Zona opened her mouth, dirt poured out. And then with a raspy, low voice, she began to tell her mother a story. She told her that Erasmus appeared to be this wonderful person to the community, but behind closed doors, he was a monster. He hit her and screamed at her over the littlest things. And then on the night of January 22nd, so one day before Zona would be discovered at the base of the stairs by Erasmus's helper, Zona's ghost would tell Mary Jane that Erasmus had become enraged at Zona over the food she had made that night for dinner. He had wanted meat and she had made something else, and so he was furious. And when Zona tried to tell Erasmus that she would make more food, or there was other food for him to eat, to just please calm down, Erasmus stood up and he grabbed Zona by the neck and he lifted her off the ground. And right at this moment in this story that Zona's ghost is telling Mary Jane, the ghost would stop speaking, and this look of abject terror would come across the ghost's face, as if she was suddenly reliving this moment that happened with Erasmus. And as she's standing there with this horrible look on her face, the ghost began to levitate off the ground, and then it opened its mouth. And as it did, no sound came out, but instead, it was like all the air in the room was getting sucked into this ghost's open mouth. And then all of a sudden, there was this loud cracking sound as the ghost's head suddenly violently whipped around 180 degrees, but the ghost's body was still facing towards Mary Jane. And after this happened, Mary Jane is sitting there totally dumbstruck, and the ghost suddenly drops back down onto the ground, still with their chest facing Mary Jane, but their face pointing behind them. And then Zona's ghost turned around and began walking out of the room, and because she had turned her body around, that meant her head, which was facing the wrong way, was now oriented towards Mary Jane again, and Mary Jane would say the ghost was smiling. And then right before Zona's ghost left, she would say to her mother, "Now do you see what he did to me?" And then Zona just vanished, and the room became warm again, and Mary Jane, who was suddenly feeling so exhausted, just sat down on the bed and wept. Mary Jane had, the next morning, promptly gotten up and rushed to the prosecutor's office and told him the story of seeing her daughter's ghost and how the ghost had told her that Erasmus had throttled her and that was what killed her. Now, the prosecutor was really moved by Mary Jane's story, but it was when he rushed to the doctor to ask about re-examining Zona's body to see if she had marks on her neck from where she could have been throttled. That was when the doctor actually told the prosecutor that when he did the examination of Zona's body on the day she was found, he would say that Erasmus spent the entire examination at the head of the bed, cradling Zona's head and brushing her hair. But now that he was thinking about it, he could have been covering up her neck with the hair. And then also they thought,
oh my Lord Jesus fucking Christ. This motherfucker Erasmus. Now, I was talking about how great his name is and how legendary and how rare and nobody else is named Erasmus. And this motherfucker, bro, was covering up a murder the whole time. Even when he did it from the beginning. When the doctors first came in. When he was holding her and cuddling her and holding her neck. The whole reason he was holding her neck all this goddamn time is because this motherfucker knew that's what a marks was from the death. Oh my God. Let's go.
thought about the funeral when, right before Zona was lowered into the ground, Erasmus placed a scarf claiming it was his wife's favorite around her neck when she was buried. Again, perhaps trying to conceal the fact that there were marks on her neck. And when they did exhume Zona's body and they removed that scarf that Erasmus had placed, they would see there were marks all over her neck that looked like fingerprints. And then upon further examination, they would see that her neck was actually dislocated and that her windpipe had been crushed. Erasmus would be arrested for the murder of his wife just minutes after the doctor and prosecutor, basically at the same time, saw the marks on Zona's neck during their re-examination. During Erasmus's trial, Mary Jane would take the stand and she would tell the story of her daughter's ghost coming to her and explaining that Erasmus had killed her. And the testimony was so compelling that the jury found Erasmus guilty, even though there was no motive. Basically, they convicted him on the strength of Mary Jane's ghost story. Erasmus would be sentenced to life in prison, but he would die just 3 years after being incarcerated from a mystery illness that passed through the prison. It would also turn out that Erasmus had been married 2 times before marrying Zona. One of his wives had divorced him for being abusive. The other wife died in a freak accident when she was helping Erasmus fix their chimney when all of a sudden a brick fell loose and hit her in the head. Today, there is a plaque right near the cemetery in West Virginia where Zona was buried that reads in part, "Only known case in which testimony from a ghost helped convict a murderer." So that's going to do it. If you enjoyed today's story, be sure to check out our podcast, which has hundreds more stories.
Check out MrBallen podcast. They got 100 more crazy ass stories. But as far as this story, y'all, oh my god, Erasmus. This dude, bro, he was covering it up the whole time. And see, the whole time, like, I was so goddamn confused and shit, didn't know what the fuck was going on. But at the same time, y'all, MrBallen, he had the clues out there when he was talking about how he was caressing her head and holding on to her, you know what I'm saying, stroking her hair. He's stroking her hair to hide them fucking marks and shit, man. That shit is crazy as fuck. And another thing, as far as this ghost shit, now, me personally, I done told y'all, man, I do believe in ghosts. I fuck believe. I know they real because I haven't seen a ghost, but I done heard the motherfuckers. I know ghosts are real, y'all. But I don't even remember how long MrBallen said. This shit took place at least 100, probably 200. I don't know exactly how long ago this story took place. It was a long time ago. All I'm saying is now, I do not believe that the justice system, especially how fucked up it is now, the government, the fucking prosecution, the judge, the jury, whatever, they not gonna find nobody guilty off no ghost story. Not in this day and age. Now back then they probably would. And I mean, what the mama said, her whole vision, whatever she saw, is actually true. Now, did she actually see? Now, see, this shit, MrBallen stories are so crazy, y'all. Because I said at the beginning of this shit, before we even got into it, I was like, I done watched stories, you know what I'm saying? It seemed like ghosts that came back and dropped the clue, or who actually killed them or whatever. But that's just a little clue. Mary Jane, Zona mama, claimed that Mary Jane literally came back in like a human form and was talking to her and showed her. Like, I ain't never heard no shit like that. And it's so crazy because what her mama claimed that that Zona came back and showed her once they dug Zona's body up and they seen the fucking scars. So maybe all this shit did happen. I don't fucking know. Maybe goddamn Zona did come back and show her mama exactly what happened, y'all. This shit be crazy as fuck. MrBallen, the man, the myth, the legend himself, y'all. I'm sorry, man. Ain't nobody else on YouTube dropping stories like this, man. And real quick, y'all, I'm gonna let y'all go. But I found out a little while back that the person who actually come up with these stories, who actually do their research and their homework for these stories, and not MrBallen, is his mama. MrBallen, mama the one who come up with these stories, you know what I'm saying? Go do the research and research the research and find out all the history and then present it to MrBallen for him to present it to us. So shout out to Mr. Mama Ballin', y'all. Shout out to her, man. Especially Mother's Day tomorrow. Happy Mother's Day to her. Happy Mother's Day to all y'all out there, man. Who, you know, mamas out there. Much respect. Hey, keep doing what you're doing. Hey, without the kids, we wouldn't have no future. Real talk. I don't know if I'm doing a story tomorrow. I'm so goddamn stuck on MrBallen shit. I meant to say I don't know if I'm doing a video tomorrow. Cause like I said, I gotta go, you know, hang with my family tomorrow. But if I do one, it's gonna be real early in the morning. I digress, man. I'm just going all over the place right now. So I guess it's just time for me to end this video. Like I said, happy early Mother's Day if I don't get to do a video tomorrow. And I'll see y'all tomorrow, man. If I do one tomorrow, man. Y'all just hit that like button, comment, subscribe, do all that. MrBallen, y'all. Mr. fucking Ballen have me like. But until I see y'all again, my brothers and sisters, I got to say this. Love, peace, and happiness. Stay safe. Don't stop. Keep going. Yeah.